First of all, your first question, I, I think it's awesome, and it gives us a chance to be competitive in our league, because if you don't have three quality starting pitchers like we have, you can't compete in the SEC this year. Everybody's going to have a loaded starting rotation, and you better have guys that can match up with other outstanding pitchers. This league is going to be filled with first round draft choices this year. Now it's a July draft, I guess. When the July draft rolls around, I think you're going to see several several SEC pitchers taken in the first couple of rounds of the draft. You might have the first two picks in the draft from Vanderbilt alone. So if you want to compete with those teams, you better have guys that can hold the other team to a low run game, because there's a strong possibility you might not be able to score many runs against that caliber of pitching. And I think all three guys that we have, Jaden Hill, Landon Marceau, and AJ Labus, are capable of matching up with a really great pitcher from the other team and holding the other team to a low run game if necessary. Obviously, you're going to try to score as many runs as you can. You hope you have a great offensive day, but you have to prepare that a game may be a low scoring game. And by having those three starting pitchers, I think it gives us a great fighting chance to be able to win each day and be competitive every day. So it's a luxury that we haven't always had. You know, there's been several years where we've only had really two established starting pitchers. And then the third day, we just kind of had to piece it together and so forth. And as long as we stay healthy and these guys pitch the way that they can potentially pitch, I don't see the need for us to do that. Certainly not on the weekend. You know, midweek, you know, who knows? You know, we're going to start out the season with midweek starters. I don't know once we get into SEC play if we're going to continue that way, or if we're going to move those guys into the bullpen to make us stronger on the weekend. But we'll worry about that. You know, we'll cross that bridge when the time comes. But having those three starters, David, gives us a great deal of confidence that we can compete with anybody. In AJ Labus's case, you know, AJ is an amazing kid, really. If you look up the word pitcher in the dictionary, there'll be a picture of AJ Labus. He is not going to overpower you with everything, but moving the ball in and out, throwing any pitch that he wants on any count for a strike, holding the running game down because he's quick to the plate. I always tell him, you're like the 15-year veteran pitcher in the major leagues, you know, that goes, you know, wins 15 games every year. You know, he's got that veteran presence about him. He's just the consummate pitcher. I can't say that any one part of his game has made great improvement from one year to the next. He's kind of always been this way. And the big thing for AJ is just to stay healthy and be healthy and go out there and pitch the way that he can. And, you know, obviously if he can throw his fastball a little bit harder, and, you know, sometimes he sits at 88, but sometimes he gets it up to 90 or 91 with the movement that he has, then that's a very effective pitch. So I just feel very confident that AJ is going to be an outstanding pitcher for us all year this year.
Hey, Paul, it's Glenn West here. You know, kind of following up on that, obviously Landon and AJ weren't with you guys for the last couple of weeks. I mean, just what have they looked like in their return, you know, in the last couple of days, and just do you kind of expect them to be, you know, ready for full steam ahead, you know, next week for the opening week?
If we were to lose somebody for, you know, 10 days or whatever it was, those would be the two guys that can most come back and adapt quickly and probably would have the least effect on. They both pitched this past Monday in a scrimmage game and both looked extremely sharp. You would not have known, if I didn't tell you, you would not have known that they had missed 10 days. They just came back and did what they do, and they threw a lot of strikes and they mixed their pitches, and they just looked really, really good. I'm hoping this weekend they're going to get a second chance to kind of extend a little bit further, because you know, obviously you'd like them to have real game time, you know, scrimmage game time. If we get rained out or colded out or whatever and can't play, then again, they'd be the two guys that I would be least concerned about them missing some time and being able to be ready to go on opening weekend. I talked to both of them a little bit yesterday about how far they thought that they would feel capable of going. And I think Jaden Hill's probably going to be limited to probably 3 innings or so. But I think Marceau's got a chance to maybe go 4 to 5 innings if he's pitching well and pitching efficiently. And I think that AJ Labus has a chance to potentially go 5 or 6 innings if he's pitching well and pitching efficiently. He usually does pitch efficiently. He doesn't walk anybody. He throws the ball over the plate and pitches to contact much more than even Landon does, and certainly more than Jaden Hill does. And so that's why I think AJ has a chance to pitch a little bit deeper even on opening weekend.
Paul, speaking of those guys, I mean, they're back. It seems like y'all had 36 of your 38 players, I think, at practice yesterday. So the issues y'all were having, is that kind of in the rearview mirror now?
Yeah, well, the biggest one that we're still waiting for is Will Helmers. Will missed basically 10 days, and he comes off of his isolation tomorrow, and as long as he passes all of the protocol with the doctors and so forth, then he'll be able to get back into practice, but maybe not full speed yet. And that's been a little bit of a blow to us because, Will is a multi-talented guy. He's during the fall, he was one of our 10 best pitchers, and we had really high hopes that we would start the season and he'd go out there and probably pitch, 3 or 4 innings for us in one outing. And that's not going to happen now. He won't be ready to do that right out of the gate. And the other thing is, I kind of, gave you a little hint the last time I talked to you that I had a thought about somebody else possibly for the left side of the infield. Well, that was Will Helmers. Unfortunately, the very day that I said that, Will got a little bit sick. And so we haven't been able to do anything with him for these last 10 days. But when he comes back, we're going to start working him both in the infield and as a hitter, and maybe put pitching on hold a little bit so that we can first explore the possibility that he may play some infield for us. And he's a really talented kid. He's got great skills as a defender. I think he hits well. The question is going to be, can we sacrifice having him available to us as a pitcher right away? And right now, I think the answer to that is yes, as long as he, shows that he can play the infield. We haven't seen enough of him yet, and that's why I wanted to use this last week to take a good look at him.
See, Rab, I believe you're next.
I can unmute myself. Okay.
Who else were we missing, Wilson? You said we had 36 of the 38.
I didn't see Gio, but I mean, I could have just missed him.
Yeah, listen, Gio, that was my decision to sit Gio out for 2 or 3 days. He just had a little slight tweak in his hip, and he was kind of mad at me when I made him sit out for a couple of days. But I just didn't want it to be a nagging thing for him when the season begins, And sometimes those little things can get worse. And Gio's his greatest attribute to our team is his running speed. And so if anything affects his running speed, we need to make sure we care for it. Listen, if this was the middle of the season, he wouldn't have sat out a day. But because it's not the middle of the season and it's still preparation of the season, I just thought that the prudent thing to do would be to let him sit a couple days, get some treatment, and let him get back out there when he's 100%.
Hey, Paul, I have kind of an esoteric question, which is not unusual.
If I knew what the word esoteric meant.
Not X's and O's, not an X and O question. Just sitting out there watching you guys scrimmage yesterday on that beautiful field and everything. I was reminded of that line from Moneyball. It's like, how can you not be romantic about baseball? Every year, baseball is like, has that feeling of renewal. I think more than any sport, but this year it seems to carry a little added weight. Do you have a sense of that? Do you have a feeling of that? Is it that way for you?
Without question, Scott, I feel that way. And I think anybody that loves the game feels that way. I know Major League Baseball got to play, and that was that was a big uplift to our country, you know, that they played their season, even though they didn't have any fans. But for us, you know, this is the next season. We haven't played since March 11th. And I know LSU fans, they like following the LSU Tigers more than they like following the Detroit Tigers. So this is going to be kind of a renewal for them as well. And everybody's just excited and can't wait. You know, unfortunately, fortunately, we've had great weather for preseason until today, and now these next few days are going to be pretty bitterly cold and rainy and so forth. But hopefully it'll get out of here, and by next weekend when we open, I feel terrible for Beth Tureen and the softball team right now that they're having to deal with it. But hopefully by next weekend when we open up, the weather will be good and the field will look great, and most importantly, hopefully we'll play great. But it just feels like, you know, every spring, you know, like the old saying, hope springs eternal. Every team is hopeful that this is going to be their championship season. You know, everybody starts 0-0. You go out there and you get what you earn on the field. And, you know, I personally love the game of baseball, and a lot of people do, because of the poetry of the game, you know, the uniqueness of the game, the skills of the game. And, you know, I'm not like Scott Rabelais or Bart Giamatti and my ability to use the English language to express myself as eloquently as you guys. But, you know, it's such a wonderful game. You know, it's a beautiful game. There's so many aspects to it. And I think, you know, when people are coming out of cold weather, oops, our lights went out. When people are coming out of cold weather and they, you know, want to feel good, that they know the spring is right around the corner, you know, it just coincides with baseball, and everybody's excited about the possibilities. And I'm a romantic by nature, Scott. So, you know, baseball and Paul Mainieri, I think, were a very good fit many years ago.
Well, I'm no Bart Giamatti either. He was very eloquent about baseball, and they'll get you excited if you go back and read some of the things he wrote.
Oh, I have. Yes, I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
I read some of the things you write too, by the way.
I appreciate that.
Let's see. I believe the next question is Jackson Freiberger. Jackson, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Hey, Coach. I'm Jackson Freiberger from Southern Slams Baseball, and I want to see what your reaction might be. The SEC coaches poll just came out, and you all were ranked 4th in the West, but also very highly number 12 in the nation overall. Could you talk about maybe the strengths of the SEC as a whole, with so much talent coming back this year, and also the challenge of ranking with so much uncertainty?
Yeah, well, it's nice to meet you, Jackson. First of all, you know, this is nothing unique to the SEC. You know, you said we're ranked 12th. I think that was the lowest ranking of all of the polls. Most of the polls had us, I think, in the top 10, and yet we were still like the 5th or 6th team in the SEC, which just speaks to the strength of our conference. When you look at the preseason rankings, you look at the SEC West. Who was picked to finish 7th? Was it Texas A&M or Alabama or somebody? Alabama started out last season 16-1. They might have the best pitcher in the conference in the left-hander that was a freshman last year that was virtually unhittable. They think he's going to potentially the #1 pick in the draft in 2022. And they were picked to finish 7th in the SEC West. You got Texas A&M, you got Auburn, you got LSU, you got Arkansas. You've got all these teams that year in and year out are Omaha contenders, national champion contenders, but they have to put the 7 teams in some order.
Yeah.
You could throw those standings out the window. They really don't mean anything. I remember in 2008, my second year here, we were picked to finish 5th in the SEC West, and we won the SEC West, and we were a national seed, and we went to Omaha. I remember the year that Texas A&M joined the league. I can't remember exactly what year that was, 14 or 15, something like that. There were 5 teams from the SEC West alone in the top 10 in the country in the preseason poll. The #1 team was Arkansas that year. Well, we won the SEC West that year as well. So you know, listen, the preseason rankings are wonderful. They give a lot to people to talk about, that the season's right around the corner. But in this league, you get what you earn. And I can't be more emphatic about that. You can literally lose all 30 games. If you don't come to the field and play great baseball on a given day, it's just as simple. You're going to lose. And you could lose every day. If you don't have a team that can compete, you can lose every day. I remember one year, Alabama a few years ago went 0-15 on the road in their 5 weekend trips. I mean, that people say, how can that happen? Well, when you're lining up against the teams that you're lining up against in this league, anybody can beat anybody on a given day. And that's why I call the SEC the major leagues of college baseball. When you think of Major League Baseball, the worst team in Major League Baseball is going to win 60 games a year. Right? I mean, the best team in Major League Baseball is going to lose 60 games a year. And why is that? Because even the worst teams are still filled with Major League caliber players. Well, every team in the SEC is filled with SEC caliber players, and anybody can beat anybody on a given day. If you dominate the SEC, you've got really something special going, because it doesn't happen very often in our league.
Okay, we'll go back to David.
Coach, I want to credit Kendall Rogers because this is where I saw the tweet. And I apologize if it's already been resolved, but the extra inning rule, how is it going to work in the SEC? And has it been resolved? And is it going to be you with the opposing coach before the game decided? Yeah. How's it going to work?
So in conference play, which we begin March 18th, I believe, is the first SEC series against Mississippi State. Then the conference rule will be in effect. And we just had a conference coaches meeting this morning, and it was decided that the extra inning rule would not be used, with the exception of getaway days, the last game of a series, when the visiting team has a commercial flight, and consequently there's a travel curfew placed on the game. So that's the only way that the extra inning rule will work. Well, in our 5 trips, we're either charter busing or charter flying. So that's never going to come into effect with us on the road. And the 5 home series, the only team I know of that is flying commercially when they come to us is South Carolina, and they're not going to fly home until the next day. Our series is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and they're going to fly home on Sunday. So it won't come into effect on that game. So I don't think it's going to affect LSU one bit, because I don't think we'll have that rule in effect for any of the SEC games. For the non-SEC games, I'm sorry, David.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry for interrupting. I just want to know what your views are on it. Like, if you could have been the person who made the decision, what are your views on it?
I think there's something exciting about it. I personally have experienced it as the manager of the USA Collegiate National Team. They called it at that time the international rule. You started with runners on first and second and nobody out in extra innings. And it really was amazing strategy. If you're the visiting team, sometimes you don't play for just one run. It's kind of like overtime in college football. Do you go for 2 or do you kick the extra, or do you kick the field goal or whatever, because the other team's going to get a chance to score as well. So when you're the visiting team, you don't sometimes just play for 1 run, and you got to try to score multiple runs, because the team that's going to come up behind you is capable of walking you off. Whereas if you're the home team and the other team didn't score in their top half of the inning, you can play for 1 run and win the game right there. So I think it made for a lot of unique decisions, stressful decisions, and I kind of liked it. But the majority of the coaches in our conference did not want to use it. And so consequently, I went along with everybody else. What's best for the conference, what's best for baseball, let's just do it. Now, the non-conference games, David, we can use it if it's by mutual agreement of the 2 coaches, and that's decided before the game. And I think we're going to use it. I'm going to have to go back and check my notes. I don't remember if it was Oral Roberts or UTSA. One of those teams asked if we could use it because they had some issues with getting home. I don't remember if it was the length of their drive or a commercial flight. Like I said, I'd have to go back and check my notes, but there will be at least one game where we'll use it. And I would even guess that we might use it for some midweek games when teams have, 3 or 4 hour drives home after a midweek night game. So we'll probably use it some, but I can't tell you for sure which games they will be used right now.
Okay, we'll go back to Wilson, and then after Wilson, Ed Daniels.
Oh, Alex Milazzo, if I'm looking at it correctly, is going to be, your starting catcher 2 years in a row it's been a while since y'all had a starting catcher 2 years in a row. What does it do for your pitching staff to have that kind of consistency behind the plate and have a catcher who's so comfortable and familiar with all the guys that you have on the mound?
Yeah, well, I didn't realize it's been a while. I guess Cade Civic might have been the last one then. Papirski? Did Papirski?
I think it was
catch you?
Papirski, but
Yeah,
I could have things mixed up.
Okay. So that would have been 16 and 17. Yeah, well, Alex is a really good leader behind the plate. Nobody's going to throw out runners better than him. His quickness of his release and his accuracy of his throws, his arm strength all contribute to him throwing out. If the pitcher gives him a chance, he's going to throw him out stealing. So that helps our pitching staff a lot because it keeps the double play in order. Sometimes it gets us an easy out that the pitcher doesn't have to earn, saves the pitches on a pitcher's arm, which allows him to pitch deeper into games and so forth. I think our pitchers have an awful lot of confidence in Alex. They believe he can block the balls in the dirt. They believe he receives pitches well and gets strikes on pitches that should be called strikes, that type of thing. It's hard for me to think of him as this hugely experienced player, though, because we only played 17 games last year. And that's the thing that I keep struggling with when I look around our team, and you think you're experienced here, you think you're experienced there, but those guys, some of them haven't even gone through an SEC schedule yet. That's when you really get hardened and become a veteran, is when you go through the SEC one time. But Alex, I think it wasn't his fault, of course, when the season got shut down after 17 games. And I think Alex has asserted himself as a leader of our team. And I think it's a tremendous asset for us to have a returning guy there, especially one as talented as him.
Okay, looks like Ed Daniels passed because he had to do a radio spot. So we'll go to Jared.
Hey, Coach, it's Jared. Any standouts for you lately? Yesterday, any scrimmages like that, especially in those key positional battles that we've talked about, that outfield playing time, we've talked about how crowded the outfield is and there's a lot of competition there. And the left side of the infield obviously is the other big one. Did you see anything yesterday that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I thought Jordan Thompson had a great day yesterday. He hit a home run in the first inning off of Garrett Edwards. Garrett was also a player that missed quite a bit of time because of contact tracing. There was nothing wrong with him at all, but we had to keep him out for a while. So it was kind of his first time back, and he threw it really well, especially in the first couple of innings, but he got a little tired in the third inning. But Jordan hit a home run off of him. He hit a high changeup and drove it out to deep left center field. There was a little bit of a prevailing breeze, but it was a great swing by him. He made a couple of terrific plays as well at third base. So I was happy to see that. And I'll tell you, another guy that has really stood out in all of the preseason has been Drew Bianco. Drew hit a 3-run homer yesterday. I think that was his second home run of the preseason. I remember once, even though he hit 2 home runs, the one swing that really impressed me this preseason was he hit a 2-strike double off the right center field fence earlier this spring. He's had some good at bats. So, I'm toying with the idea of giving him another look in the infield as well over these next couple of days. So I mentioned Helmers once he's healthy, taking a look at him. I mentioned Drew Bianco just now. So that's left side of the infield is still very much in flux.
Okay, looks like we have another question. Is that Willow, if you would identify yourself.
Will Weathers.
Oh, thank you, Will. I thought so. I wasn't sure though.
Like, who's Will Willow?
Yeah, I thought that was you.
Home computer, yeah.
There you go, Will.
Coach, I wanted to ask you specifically about Dylan Cruz, and you've had tremendously talented players commit to you well before their senior year, and your confidence level, not knowing for sure they're ever going to show up,
Right.
because their draft status. How refreshing has it been to see Dylan actually show up, and then just kind of projecting how he's looked and adapted to the college game?
This is, Will, the unique challenge that we have as college baseball coaches. I mean, we've, in football and basketball, it's a rather new phenomena to lose kids before they complete their 4 years. I mean, you go back just a short time ago, and the national champion football team or national champion basketball team were made up of seniors all the time. They were the veteran older guys, and then all of a sudden the one and dones and the football players are declaring early and so forth. That's something baseball has been dealing with forever. Okay. But nobody really cared enough about baseball to ever shed a tear for poor baseball coaches that lost these players early. The other thing that's unique about baseball is that we lose players before they even come to school. And you spend all this time recruiting them, getting to know them, selling them on your school, on your program, and then they end up signing professionally before they even come to school. That's one thing that basketball and football still don't have to experience, at least not very frequently. So, you hope. I mean, I can tell you there's never been a player I've ever recruited that I didn't believe was sincere about his desire to want to come to college. Some of them get offered opportunities that they just couldn't turn down. And I've never held it against the kid. I've never blamed him. I've never been angry at him. If that's what they feel is the best thing for them in their lives at that time, then you have no choice but to support them. But I legitimately support them if that's what they want to do. But there's no question that when they do sign it, it changes the dynamic of your team. And you look at our team right now, our 3 starting pitchers of AJ Labus, Landon Marceau, and Jaden Hill, they all could have signed out of high school had they chosen to. Well, how different would our team be right now if we didn't have those 3 guys? Okay. We had a shortstop that had signed with us a couple years back by the name of Bryce Terang. And I mean, I really had a conversation with him in the middle of July while I was managing the USA team. I was on the bus returning to Cary, Indiana from Charlotte, North Carolina. We just played the Japanese team in a thrilling game. And I was on the phone with Bryce for an hour. And I was absolutely convinced that he was coming to school the next day. He was going to turn down the Brewers and he was going to come to school. Well, he didn't. He ended up signing. And then, a year later, Christian Cairo was a shortstop we signed, and he was absolutely on campus ready to start summer school, and he decided to sign. Well, you lose a couple of quality infielders like that, then that has an effect on your team as well. So anytime you hold on to a player that has exceptional talent, like our 3 starting pitchers, like Dylan Cruz you asked about, it's going to just make your team that much better. And my personal feeling and my personal belief, and I don't try to influence the kids, they have to make their own mind, but I think these kids really value from the experience that they have in college. Sometimes they may wonder, did they make the right decision or did they not? Because the nature of the game is there's peaks and valleys, there's ups and downs. And when you have a down moment, you wonder, oh, should I have taken the money and run when I had the opportunity? But the reality is that these kids come to the university as kids and they leave as men. They leave as adults that have dealt with the ups and downs of the sport and other issues in their life. And by the time they go into professional baseball, they're hardened and they're tough and they're more confident and they're more apt to succeed because of all of that. Not to mention just the improvement that they've made because of physical strength gains, knowledge, experience, and so forth. So, listen, you asked again about Dylan. I always fear that a kid that's highly touted like that, everybody expects him to be perfect. And the game of baseball, the nature of the game is you can't be perfect. Nobody's perfect. In the history of the game, nobody's been perfect. And Dylan Cruz is not going to be perfect. Jaden Hill's not going to be perfect. Nobody is, okay? But they'll get better by the experience of it all. And you hope that the success rate is a little bit higher than some other players that you may have had, and that they make a really positive impact on your team. And I feel very strongly that Dylan Cruz will do that. He's going to have his moments. Yesterday he struck out with a runner on third base and 2 outs, and he was upset with himself. But he also led off the game with a ringing double in the left field corner, and he had a good walk that he earned, against the pitcher. But he also had a bad strikeout. So that's just the way baseball is. There's going to be good, there's going to be bad in every day, and it's your ability to put the bad behind you quickly without losing your confidence that's going to allow you to succeed at a rate that makes you considered to be a really great player.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Joseph Bailey from Southern Slams, if you could introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Joseph Bailey, Southern Slams Baseball. I hope you're doing well, Coach.
Joseph, nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you too. I heard you mention some standouts from on the field stuff during practice to this point. Have you had any players stand out as particular leaders of your team off the field?
I'd like to say I get to spend a lot of time with the players off the field, but I really don't. Obviously it's COVID time and we haven't made any trips. And last year we didn't make any trips, and this year we obviously haven't made any trips. I guess last year we went to Houston, but I don't really get to spend a lot of time with the players off the field. So those kind of guys that people look up to within the team, sometimes I'm the last one to find out, because I don't know what they're doing 24 hours a day. I don't know who they're hanging out with. I don't know how people are talking to each other, when they're with each other. But for me, I would assume that their personalities that they show on the field are probably pretty consistent with their personalities off the field. I think a guy like Drew Bianco is somebody that a lot of kids look up to because he's in his 3rd year here. He's kind of a gregarious guy. He's very vocal, But then you look at those 3 starting pitchers that we have, they're very experienced guys. You look at a guy like Fontenot or Beck or Vittmeyer, Mikhail Hilliard, guys that have been around for a while. I would think that our players would all have respect for those kind of gentlemen on our team. And I would hope that they would assert themselves as leaders. But you can never have enough leadership, Joseph. And if we have a team that's dependent on 1 or 2 guys to be leaders, we're doomed for failure. If you don't have a team full of leadership, then you just can't succeed. There's too many ups and downs in the game, and the leaders really rear their head when things are going tough. It's easy to lead when everything's going great. When you face that adversity is when the real leaders step forth and say, everything's going to be okay. We're going to be all right. And everybody believes them, and they jump in line and let's go. Let's get back after it. So as the season progresses, I'm sure some players will assert themselves more as leaders than right now, before the season's begun.